Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing another episode of the Complete Marvel Rivals Guide. My name is Kearless, and if you don't know me already, I am a 2-time Peak Eternity player and continue to play this game to this very day. It's nice to meet you. This is the Complete Marvel Rivals Guide. It is a series where I will be posting every single day going over high-level concepts that you should be utilizing in your own games if you want to improve. My overall goal with this series is to help a ton of people to achieve their peak ranks. And without any further ado, let's get into it. On screen now, I'm going to put up the complete lesson guide, so if you guys ever wanted to choose a lesson that you're not super comfortable on, I'm going to put that on screen now so you can go ahead and pick one. We're now on lesson 29 out of 30. Throughout this series, we've covered almost every single major concept you need to understand in Marvel Rivals at a higher level. But simply knowing these concepts doesn't actually automatically make you better. You have to turn that knowledge into habits. There's a huge difference between playing Marvel Rivals and practicing Marvel Rivals. So we're going to get into that right now. You can play for 8 hours and barely improve, or you can play for 2 hours with a specific goal and make meaningful progress. So playing, for example, is I'm just going to queue ranked, but practicing is today I'm focusing on taking better off angles. The difference here is intent. So hours played don't automatically equal hours improved. And make sure that you have a goal before you queue. Before you start playing, ask, what am I working on today? Not, I want to win. Winning isn't a practice goal. Choose something that you can actually control. For example, like check the kill feed more, track the important enemy cooldowns, improve your positioning, and stop chasing the kills. Take the better angles. Look for your team before engaging. Just tracking the enemy ultimates and improving your target priority are also examples of this. And every single game now has purpose beyond gaining or losing the rank. It's also super important to notice that you should be practicing one thing at a time, and this connects directly back to mental stack, which we talked about in a previous episode. I don't want you to enter the game thinking, okay, today I'm going to improve my positioning, cooldown tracking, target priority, ult tracking, rotations, communications, threat mapping, blah, 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 blah. You're just going to end up overloading yourself. You want to pick one major focus, maybe two if they're closely connected, and then deliberately think about that concept throughout your games. Focused practice beats scattered practice in this scenario. And something I definitely want to include in this video is that your performance might get worse at first. When you deliberately practice something new, you might temporarily play worse, and that's completely normal. Imagine you're learning to take more off angles. Normally, positioning is automatic. Now you're constantly thinking, is there a better angle? That's part of you using your mental stack. And when you're using that mental stack, you might miss shots, react slower, or just make other mistakes. That doesn't mean that practicing it isn't working. Eventually, that skill will become automatic, and your performance comes back with that new skill added because it lightens your mental stack load. I really want you guys to build a practice cycle, and I'm going to give you an example of a practice cycle. It's going to pop up on screen right now. So I want you to choose, practice, review, adjust, and then repeat. So for choose, I want you to pick one skill. Practice, I want you to focus on that during your games. I want you to review it. So like, did you actually do it? Then I want you to adjust and figure out what needs to change, and then repeat. Keep practicing until it becomes more natural, and then move on to the next concept. There is also a difference between mechanics versus decision-making practice, and not everything should be practiced the same way. So mechanics are things like aim, movement, combos, and ability execution, and these can often be isolated and repeated. You can use practicing ranges, custom games, aim training, repetition, but decision making is things like positioning, target priority, tempo, threat mapping, and resource management, and these you usually need to practice inside of actual games because the situation constantly changes throughout Marvel Rivals. You can't really practice target priority up against a stationary bot. You need real situations where the correct target changes and you can actually apply the things that you've learned in the game. It is also extremely important to mention that you shouldn't be practicing on autopilot. We talked about this in the beginning of the series, and this is where players waste hundreds of hours. They queue, play, win, queue, play, lose, and at no point do they ask, what am I actually getting better at? And if you catch yourself completely autopiloting, you should reset your focus and remind yourself what you're practicing for. I want you to measure your progress differently. Because if you're practicing your positioning, don't judge the session entirely by wins and losses. Maybe you go 2 and 3, but dramatically reduce the amount of unnecessary deaths. That's progress, because if your goal was stop dying before the fight starts, and you went from dying 4 times per game to dying once, then you improved, even if you lost rank that day. And now we're going to get into the section where VOD reviewing becomes important. I want you to practice around your weaknesses. You shouldn't randomly just choose what to practice, and you want to use your gameplay to identify what is actually holding you back. What mistakes are you really making? Maybe you review 3 games and realize I keep dying because I'm taking the aggressive angles without knowing where their dive characters are, or I'm taking the aggressive angles with knowing I have a bad matchup on the dive. So now you found your practice goal, and you might focus on threat mapping for the next few days. VOD reviews help identify the problem, and deliberate practice is the thing that fixes it so that you don't make that mistake again. I also don't want you practicing what you're good at. Players naturally practice things that they enjoy. If you have great mechanics, you might spend another hour practicing aim. But why? Because you're already good at it. It feels good. Meanwhile, your positioning is actually what's making you lose games. So the thing that you actually enjoy practicing isn't always the thing that you need to be practicing. Your weakness is your important skill, and that's often the biggest potential return on your training. Quality over quantity is super important because more games aren't always better. After several hours, you start to get tired, you start to get frustrated, your autopilot, your decision making gets so much worse. And at that point, are you even still practicing, or are you just playing? Because sometimes 5 focused games are more valuable than 15 mindless games. This is why it's super important to take breaks, because if you're tilted, exhausted, or just not focusing, and you're just playing to just recover the lost rank, you need to take a break, because you're trying to build good habits. Practicing while you're completely mentally checked out can reinforce bad ones. And this doesn't mean lose 1 game and quit. No, I'm not saying that. It means recognize when you're no longer actually practicing effectively and when you should be taking a break. And now for building one skill at a time, this brings the series back to lesson 1. You don't become an elite player overnight. You stack improvements, positioning becomes automatic, then angles, then cooldown tracking, then threat mapping, then information gathering, and each skill takes up way less mental stack. And eventually, you're doing things automatically that you once had to consciously remind yourself to do. And elite gameplay is built from hundreds of small habits executed automatically. Now I'm going to go over an example practice session, and I'm going to give you a practical thing to look at. So let's say your weakness is threat mapping. Before you play, set the goal, I'm going to track the enemy flanker. And during every game, repeatedly ask where they actually are. And then after each game, ask how many times did they surprise me? And then after the session, if they surprised you less often, that means that you're improving, and keep practicing until checking that threat starts becoming automatic. Then choose another weakness that you have to focus on. So my simple improvement routine is before playing, I choose one thing to focus on. While playing, I deliberately practice it. And after each game, I ask myself how well I executed it. And then after the session, I review my mistakes, or I go back and look at a VOD. And then next session, I keep the same focus, or I move on to something else because it's becoming more automatic. And then that's literally it. I don't need to spend 8 hours of a professional training schedule. I just need purposeful repetition. And now for your homework. Since this is lesson 29, I'm going to make the homework slightly different, and I want you to pick one lesson from this entire series that you believe is currently your biggest weakness. And for your next 10 games, yeah, not 5 games, but 10 games, make that concept your primary focus. And don't judge those games purely by wins and losses or kill-death ratio, but after game 10, ask, am I getting better at this than I was before in game 1? If yes, keep practicing until it becomes natural, and then choose your next biggest weakness. And with that, we've covered every individual concept that I wanted to teach in the series, but there's still one lesson left. And in lesson 30, we're taking everything from lessons 1 through 29 and applying it to actual high-level team fight. We're going to break down what happens, why it happens, and every decision that goes into winning the fight, so please be sure to check out that last video, as it's going to be a really good one. Alright guys, that's going to be it for me for this video. I'm thinking I'm going to start recording my last video for the series. I pretty much have it all edited. I just need to tweak a few things and then finish the voiceover, but it is going to take me a couple more hours to do that. But thank you guys so much for your patience with this series. I really like trying to do one every single day. I'm sorry I didn't stick to it with the best of my ability, but I'm happy that I'm getting through it, and I love seeing your guys' support. Please let me know if you guys have any other video recommendations. I am going to be posting individual character guides, and then I'm also going to be doing an Unranked to Celestial series, and I might be posting some of my actual esports games so you can see what it looks like when higher level gameplay comes together and real players from esports teams actually get together, because it's a lot more than just regular comp. There's a lot more going on. So yeah, let me know if you guys want to see that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, please click the like, comment. I love seeing your guys' comments, and also subscribe. It would help me out a lot. I'm trying to reach that 100 subscriber mark. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you in the final video of the series. Peace.